Jersey Opera House, first opened in 1900, is one of the island's most iconic buildings. In March 2020, the theatre, which has seen the likes of Langtry and McKellen tread its boards, closed its doors and has been shut ever since, with renovation work rumbling on seemingly indefinitely. However, it looks like there might finally be a bit of light at the end of the tunnel. In this episode of Bailiwick Podcasts, I, Charlie Flynn, spoke to Andy Eagle, the newly appointed Interim Director at the Jersey Opera House. With a career in the arts spanning over a decade, Andy and I discussed the state of the arts in Jersey, the potential the island has for nurturing future talent, and just when we might finally see the Opera House back in action. So I don't know whether first you might be able to just tell me like a little bit about kind of your background and sort of how you've ended up in this situation.
Yes, certainly. So I was working for best part of the last 30 years in Wales actually, and running a variety of venues. The last one being Chapter Arts Centre, where I was for 11 years in Cardiff. And July last year, I took the decision to do some projects and go off and do some other things. Running a venue post-COVID was pretty exhausting, so I needed a bit of a change and a bit of a break. So I've been doing that, and then this opportunity came up in Jersey, and I have connections to Jersey through family.
Oh, right.
I used to come here on holiday when I was between the ages of about 4 till 9. So there's this sort of, a connection to the island. So I applied for the job and, delighted to say I got it.
Yeah,
so I'm here on the island.
That's great. How did you get into kind of the arts and things like that? I mean, is it something you've always kind of had a bit of a fascination with, or something you sort of fell into? Yes.
A bit of both, really. I went to university in Lancaster many years ago, and totally honest, my initial plan was to get a degree behind me and then go off and tread the boards and become an actor. But whilst at university, I did some work experience in a couple of theatres, the Royal Court being one, which in London, which I kind of fell in love with. So after that, I decided to go into administration and marketing and management, really. And so I very much fell into it, really. But it's been good to me. No,
absolutely. So you said you worked for most of your time in Wales. So you were doing the Chapter Arts. I mean, what was that kind of like for you? I mean, was it quite a challenging place to?
Absolutely. I mean, the Chapter's a fascinating venue. So I was there for 11 years, and it's basically two cinema spaces, two theatre spaces, large cafe, bar, restaurant, gallery. A whole programme of community outreach activities. But very interestingly, there's 52 companies, creative companies and artists that are based within the studios of the centre. So it's a massive hub for the arts. And there's a lot of talk on the island of Jersey about there being a sort of hub for creativity and a hub for artists to meet and call home, if you like. And Chapter's a pretty good blueprint for that. It started back in the 1970s and it's just grown from there. So it's a really interesting venue. It's a very good model, which I think Jersey can perhaps learn some things from, and I can hopefully pass on that knowledge to the appropriate people within government and wider field. Before that, I was running a mid-scale venue in Brecon for 11 years, and before that, I opened a small arts centre in the Swansea Valley in a little town called Pontardawe. So it's been pretty varied over the years. Yeah,
that's incredible. I mean, I don't know whether you're coming into the arts centre as the kind of interim director. So I don't know whether it might be worth you explaining sort of what that job sort of entails. Like, what would you sort of be doing, I suppose?
I mean, in a nutshell, it's overseeing the redevelopment of the Opera House,
right, sure.
Working with government and the contractors who are to be appointed. Ensuring that work is carried out. Other works are perhaps fundraised for and carried out during that period, and then to relaunch the Opera House with a new programme, new, if you like, business plan, new operation. I think it's been closed since March 2020, the Opera House, and it's kind of missed on the island. So it's coming. It's just it will be a little bit of a wait still. But there's good support from government. What I've seen is very interesting. So the opportunity to relaunch a venue like the Opera House doesn't often come around. So I jumped at the opportunity.
Cool. Do you know when roughly? I mean, can you speak to when it will actually be able to kind of reopen and everything?
I mean, I don't want to get too sort of hung up on exact
sure.
dates, really, but it's going to be back end of 24,
right, okay.
25, I suspect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's still quite a lot of things to be done as regards the project and the building to get it fit for purpose. So there isn't an exact date, but it's still going to be a little bit of a wait, but hopefully we'll have done it correctly and properly, and it'll be worth the wait.
Yeah, I mean, so did you kind of ever visit the art centre before it kind of closed, and did you manage to see it sort of in its prime, I suppose?
The Opera House.
Yeah.
No, I mean it was the first time I'd visited.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah,
sure.
it was when I came over for interview middle of April.
Right.
So yeah, that was the first time I'd actually seen it, and it's a gem. It's an absolutely beautiful venue.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And it's very important that these venues are maintained, retained across not just the Channel Islands, but across the whole of the UK. They're glorious buildings. So when it's back and open, it will be very welcome, and I'm sure it'll be very well supported.
Is it quite different from the places you were working in Wales in terms of that? Is it because it's obviously it's an opera house. It's a little bit grander. I suppose it's a little bit more of a sort of traditional theatre going experience.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the place that I was working in before was very much 7 days a week. 9 in the morning till 11 o'clock midnight. So very different operations. Yeah. Cinemas, theatres, but it's all about people coming in and enjoying themselves. The Opera House is perhaps a little bit more linear in that respect.
Yeah, sure.
But the same buzz, I'm sure, will be created when there's a full house in there enjoying themselves. And I think part of my role is to make sure the welcome is excellent from a staffing perspective, but also a physical perspective from the building refurb. Yeah. So there's there's lots to look forward to.
I don't know. I mean, like places like the Jersey Arts Centre, they do things like they have workshops and short film screenings and artist residencies and things like that occasionally. I don't know whether you'd want to see the Opera House kind of take that kind of direction and try and do different things, or kind of keep it more like shows. And
I think there's an opportunity for the Opera House to do more, yes, and that's part of the thinking. And there seems to be a demand on the island for it to do more, and the capacity for it to do more. But one of the things we don't want to do is replicate what's happening at the Art Centre or Art House or anywhere else. So part of my role is, I think, to ensure there's a kind of anti-clash diary, if you like, on the island. And make sure that we work in partnership with those organisations and other groups. But yes, I think there's certainly an opportunity there for us to do perhaps a bit more than the straight-on performances, of which I'm hoping will be kind of varied.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether you might be able to speak to kind of the potential that a building like the Jersey Arts Centre has. I mean, I know, I think Jersey is a place, there's quite an appetite for artistic things. I mean, I think a lot, generally, I think we've got quite a passionate art scene on this island for such a small place. I mean, I don't know whether, you might be able to kind of speak to how important a building like the Art House could be for Jersey.
I mean, extremely important. I mean, it's been very clear to me, just in the very short time I've been on the island, that there's a kind of void with it not being there. I mean, just anecdotally, taxi drivers and people I've met in shops have said, "Oh, you're working the Opera House, great. When's it reopening?" Very, very nice piece of information I discovered over the last week was, pretty much every child on the island has the opportunity to perform on the Opera House stage from the various schools. So, those sorts of things are kind of treasured, and those sorts of things, stick in the mind of a 7 or 8 year old. Yeah. So we'd like to bring that back. So I think there's a huge opportunity for it to galvanise the arts community, but the wider community. And, I'd like us to perhaps be particularly more inclusive and a bit more diversive with the things that we put on. There's a large Portuguese community on the island, a large Polish community on the island, that we'd like to ensure they come in to see the programme that we put on, or the activities that we put on. So, I think there's an opportunity there for us to deliver in perhaps a larger way. And then of course, occasionally the big shows. We have that we have that capacity
Yeah.
to attract a certain calibre of artists that other places on the island don't have.
Yeah, of course.
So that's what we'd be aiming to do as well.
Someone I know really well works at a theatre company in the UK called Freckle, and they're like a children's. They put on children's theatre, and they do a lot of stuff like Julia Donaldson stuff. So like the Gruffalo and things like that. So and they were they're doing a tour at the moment, and I think they had a conversation about possibly kind of coming to Jersey, coming to the Channel Islands, but they decided that they weren't able to do that because we didn't have a venue that was kind of large enough to make it sort of worth their while. So I suppose that's another thing where the Opera House, if you do it right, you can kind of attract sort of things from over in the UK and things like that.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd very much like the Jersey Opera House to become part of the wider touring circuit in the UK. But there's also opportunities, I think, to look to France as well.
Yeah.
And to see what we might be able to bring over from there. And perhaps even further afield. One of the things that I think Jersey is very keen to see is a greater impression, footprint, if you like, identity on the international stage. So I think the Opera House and culture as a general principle can support that initiative. So that's what I'd like to do, is put us back on that touring circuit.
Yeah.
And the touring circuit's changed quite a lot since COVID. It's still not back up to where it was. And that's going to be one of the challenges to get us back in the psyche of quite a lot of producers and agents who perhaps have had to be a little bit more conservative than they prefer to be, or choose to be. So yeah, there's plenty of things to get my teeth stuck into.
Yeah. I mean, do you think things? Obviously things aren't quite back to where they were pre-COVID. I mean, do you see things kind of, getting back to where they were at all, or do you think the industry's taken kind of a permanent dent there?
I think that's a really good question. No, I don't think it's taken a permanent dent, but I think it is going to take a while to get back. There's other pressures. There's cost of living crisis. There's energy prices, and a lot of buildings are struggling in that respect from a revenue and a cost perspective. So I think it's going to take a little bit longer. And the commitment from Jersey government, I think, is to be applauded. Actually, putting money into refurbish the Opera House, but also its support for other arts initiatives on the island. So there's a lot going in the right direction, but I think it's going to still take a while.
Yeah.
And people's habits have changed. There's no doubt about it. And I think venues have to respond to that and be fit for purpose in the new environment of the new world, if you like.
Yeah.
Because I think it has changed. I think some of those changes are quite subtle, actually.
Well, what kind of thing would?
I think from a cinema perspective, when I was at Chapter in Cardiff, we used to put on a lot of cinema. Not the mainstream cinema. What we call specialist cinema. So
right.
Stuff coming out supported by the British film industry, the BFI, and international cinema. And those audiences still haven't grown back to where they were.
Right.
So part of that, I think, is probably the challenge of things like Netflix,
right?
Other streaming platforms. But, the demise of cinema, for example, has been talked about for 30, 40 years, but it's never actually happened.
Yeah, sure.
So I think these art forms are more resilient than perhaps we initially think. And I think exactly the same with theatre.
Yeah, of course.
It's resilient. It's part of the makeup of the culture of this island, but also, the wider UK.
Yeah.
It's kind of in our DNA, so I'm pretty sure it'll be okay. But it's got to evolve and change a bit and get itself fully back on its feet.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think? Sorry, this is quite a big question, but what do you think the sort of biggest challenge to things like sort of live theatre is at the moment? Is it cost? Is that the kind of one of the main things? Because I know, if you go to the West End, I mean, theatre tickets are ludicrous. But
I mean, there's a great line in theatre. How do you make your first million in theatre? Lose 10 million first. So there's always been this kind of disparity, if you like, between sort of risk and commercialism and subsidy and all that sort of thing. So I think it's under pressure, but nothing beats a live experience.
Yeah.
And I think I still get a buzz out of watching a full house, enjoying a show, and the audience kind of living a performance together. It's extremely powerful. So we have to make sure we get young people in first of all into theatres and then retain them. So, I think there's always been kind of lots of other things that can stop people going to theatre, but it's shown its resilience over the years, so I think it will be okay. But we've got to keep on putting on good things.
That's the challenge, isn't it? That's the challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know whether it might be worth I know you've obviously only been in the island since Monday, but I suppose you've kind of looked at the art scene in Jersey and kind of seen. I mean, do you think that Jersey's quite a supportive place for somebody who kind of wants to, somebody who wants to kind of become an artist, be it theatre or film or what have you? I mean, do you think it's somewhere that's quite nurturing of that kind of thing, or do you think it can do more?
I mean, I think the intention is there, absolutely. Right. Yes, I do. And I think the Jersey government decision a few years ago, I'm not entirely sure of the year, but to allocate 1% of GDP to arts and culture is a phenomenal initiative and endorsement of the arts and culture on the island, and to be recognised by artists and the arts community. And my impression is that it is. It's very, very welcomed and recognised. But I think one of the challenges, if you're an independent artist, has got to be things like cost of housing. Yeah. Access to affordable studio space, and of course the cost of getting your work seen, which invariably the goal means going north to the UK or south to France. So I think there's a lot of challenges to being an independent artist, and those challenges are the same on the mainland actually. There's real pressure, I think, and a concern that artists and creatives can only come from a certain financial background, and what we don't want to do is lose the people who come from the kind of the working class backgrounds, the Julie Walters of this world, right. Or the Richard Burtons of this world, who came from very, very challenging backgrounds. Brian Cox, for example, who's just been in Succession on the TV. Of course. These we mustn't lose these incredibly talented performers who probably would argue they wouldn't have the same opportunities now as they did, ironically, when they first started out 50 odd years ago. So we're in a state where we have to recognise what do we value, and if we want people to come with lots of different voices and lots of different backgrounds into the arts and creativity, we've got to provide those channels and those platforms for them to do so.
I mean, what kind of thing would you see as what would be helpful to kind of making sure that people do get those opportunities? I mean, is it kind of specific sort of subsidies and grants and things like that, or?
I mean, I think these sorts of things are always kind of contentious, but one of the things that Arts Council England, I think, has been muting recently is a kind of a minimum salary retainer, if you like, for independent artists that kind of allows them to keep the wolf from the door, so they can maintain their creative work, but also recognise they probably need to do some other part-time work, but part-time as opposed to full-time. So those sorts of initiatives are being considered, and I think there's a certain mileage and a certain value to those. I don't think Jersey's quite there as yet. I think it's one of the discussions that I'm sure will come to the fore over the next few years or so.
Yeah, great. I mean, I don't know, just out of curiosity, really. I mean, obviously, are you going to be facing kind of slightly different challenges in Jersey than you were in Cardiff, for instance? I mean, is there slightly different?
No, I'm sure there will be. Yes, yeah. I mean, Cardiff's a city of nearly 400,000, whatever it is. I mean, very interestingly, I think the Gervais discussion here is kind of where the discussion in Welsh was probably 10, 15, maybe 20 years ago. Right. The promotion of the indigenous language. So that's very interesting. And I'm kind of looking forward to learning more about that and being a part of that. So I think the challenges will be different. I'm sure they will, but a venue's a venue. It's a great venue, and I'm looking forward to putting some stuff on it once we're refurbished and ready. Yes.
Yeah, of course. One thing I saw the other day, which was that there was a report that came out a little while ago. I think it was on October, talking about the possibility of a sort of performing arts festival in Jersey. I mean, I don't know whether you think that might be something that's sort of feasible, or.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things we will be planning to do is kind of Jersey Opera House in the wider community over the next 18 months. So, for example, we've been working with Ballet de Gérer, a few weeks ago, where we supplied the technical equipment and the technical expertise to present them at home farm. There's groups like Art House, Jersey Art Centre, wider community groups that we'd very much like to work with to put on a performing arts festival. Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's mileage in it, definitely.
Yeah.
It's kind of finding the site, finding obviously the finance, finding the right identity for something like that as well. But there's plenty of quality on the island I think could be showcased in something like that.
I mean, so what is your sort of I suppose your sort of first task when what are you going to be looking at sort of straight away when you really get stuck into it?
I mean, at the moment I'm looking at sort of what might be the additional things the Opera House could do. I say without treading on the toes of Art House or Art Centre or anybody else. So I think there's, I'm just trying to look at that and trying to get my head around. Do
you know any idea what kind of things those might be?
Not really at the moment, if I'm being totally honest, after a week.
Sure.
But there does seem to be a relationship that we can forge. My sense is, and this is far from critical. It's just an observation, and it happens in lots of places. I think things have been kind of in isolation, and I think there's an opportunity for the arts community as a whole to maybe think more collectively. And in fairness, the Jersey government's trying to encourage that as well. So we use resources better. We don't accidentally do the same thing on the same day, that sort of stuff. So, I think there's an opportunity there to really kind of observe and promote collectively what is happening on the island. So not just us, but also Art House. And other places. So I think there's a lot we can do as a sector, and it seems to be coming together in a way perhaps it hasn't previously. And that's exciting.
One of the things I feel like is something that I think this maybe is a challenge for the arts generally, but I know I think most often what people say is, I'll go and see something and I'll tell people about it and they'll go, oh my god, right, I had no idea that was on at all. I had never seen that anywhere. And I feel like that is, I think for me anyway, in my experience, that's kind of one of the biggest challenges in Jersey is people just don't know what's going on.
I think that's I've heard that said actually just in this last week. So I think there's massive opportunity for the arts sector, whether that's with government or just getting on with it ourselves, to promote what we do a bit more effectively and a bit better, and cross market across various whatever, and maybe have a bit of a joined up social media element and things like that. So that comment has been passed to me from a few quarters this week already. Absolutely. Actually, it's an interesting one. I mean, I don't know. I mean, do you think it's possible to get kind of a buzz going in a place like Jersey for bit major kind of shows or what have you? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can get a buzz going in any city or region or place. So absolutely, and that's the intention, is to get the buzz going and build up to reopening, so that people are excited about it and have a sense of ownership about it on the island, and watch this space, so to speak.
Thank you to Andy Eagle for taking the time to discuss the future of the Jersey Opera House with us. Don't forget to visit bailiwickexpress.com or pick up a copy of your local Jersey Evening Post.